There were so many treacherous locations across planet Earth during the Combine regime. A lot of these were developed by the alien empire, but there were others that formed naturally as a deadly result of a connection between two very different dimensions. City 17 was dominated under the might of the Combine Empire, but even they struggled to contain a problem that not only spread throughout an important stronghold, but also threatened to derail their plans. Why was an entire section of City 17 quarantined? What secrets did it hold? And how did the unfortunate souls inside finally escape their perpetual torment? Here, we explore the lore and story behind the Quarantine Zone. The dark, dystopian streets of City 17 offered a sad look at how the world had once functioned before the arrival of the Combine. This had once been a strong Eastern European city, but had been transformed into a prison to house and monitor the human population that had been transported here like cattle. In this new world order, the Combine controlled the human population and imprisoned the Vortigaunt, a unique species that had an impressive natural connection to an unseen force of power, the Vortessence. While the Combine had shown their force and might, there were other threats not only across the wasteland, but also right within the city. The Combine themselves were brutal and ruthless in their approach, whereas this other force simply created horrors and torment by nature. Portal storms had ravaged the planet, and with them came seeds, spores, and life from another dimension, the border world of Zen. As these arrived on Earth, they simply behaved as nature had intended. They sprouted and spread. Zenian flora and fauna was entirely different to that of Earth's. It was actively hostile, intelligent by design, and difficult to eradicate. That was just the plant life. The creatures of the border world were worse, and soon the Combine became aware of this problem. The Combine required City 17 to store, indoctrinate, and control a portion of the human population. The issue was that as the headcrabs wandered, barnacle spores formed on ceilings and antlions created nests. They not only killed the human and Combine units that encountered them, but they also got in the way of daily Combine operations. This was a growing issue and would only get worse if they did not intervene. Those who survived the dangers of this region of City 17 abandoned their homes in haste as the Combine decided to quarantine several blocks of the city with a smart barrier. Upon the completion of the protective construction, the alien empire ordered the human population not to enter. Anyone discovered within was threatened with capital persecution, to be killed on sight. As for the bodies of those on the metro that had made their final stop, or the workers who had been killed by Zenian forces, they were simply left to rot. This infestation of growths, fungi, spore spreaders, snappers, light stalks, bloaters, and coral ears had expanded for blocks and blocks through the sewer system and was dangerous to anyone who encountered it. The Combine knew how to conquer and dominate, but it appeared that in the early stages of the infestation, even they struggled to find a way to contain it. At one point, they discovered that a solution extracted from the antlion had a pretty great effect when applied to the Zenian growths. Upon this discovery, the Combine set up antlion farms within a tanker yard close to an antlion nest. Within here, they captured the antlion they could and milked them of this substance. Interestingly enough, there was another section of this farm in which an antlion was restrained and connected to several imprisoned Vortigaunts in pods. It is unknown what the Combine hoped to gain from this. However, what is known is that the Vortigaunt did rely on an antlion extract to enhance their connection to the Vortessence, a power source the Combine had acquired access to through the imprisoned Vortigaunt. This antlion solution was incredibly important in the reduction of the spread of the Xenian infestation. To deploy it, the Combine hired human workers to enter the quarantine zone donned in hazmat suits to spray every Xenian-infected surface they saw. In theory, this would have been a fantastic plan. Even so, while the majority of the dangers of the Xenian plant life were almost simple to avoid with protective clothing and a gas mask, the creatures of Xen were not. Headcrabs latched onto the heads of the workers, burrowed into their brains and transformed them into zombies. Barnacles formed on ceilings and simply waited for something to touch their tongues. Bloaters grew on the walls, and when they detected the movement of anything, they swelled and exploded. This not only severely injured or killed whatever had triggered it, but it also helped spread more of the Xenian seeds and spores. Alongside this, many attempts were made to reduce the spread entirely. Sandbags blocked off doorways, and Combine security doors and force fields were installed, but these did not stop the Xenian expansion. From the outside of the quarantine zone, the population of City 17 was kept in the dark of the activities that happened within. It was once an entire region with homes, hotels, a distillery, a zoo, a train line, and many more iconic spots left to rot. The only way in and out was through checkpoints under guard by Combine units. As the years passed, City 17 continued on under the Combine regime. Humanity lived in fear under constant surveillance. Around them, their human-built structures were transformed by Combine machinery and technology into strongholds and bases of operations. Everything had changed. Yet, the segregation of the quarantine zone had left it mostly free from Combine influence. In essence, the Xenian infestation had almost turned this region of City 17 into a time capsule of the old world. The metro system displayed advertisements for vodka, a popular holiday destination, a cheese dream, shows and vehicles. Around the nostalgia, however, lay the growths and dangers of the dimension of Xen. Although quarantined, this region was still of some use to the Combine, and they did continue in their attempts to contain the spread. But more dangers revealed themselves as Xen's flora adapted to Earth's landscape and climate. An interesting discovery made only within the QZ was that of the armoured headcrab. This creature appeared to have once been a simple headcrab, but as it had navigated the dangers of Xen on Earth, a fungal growth had formed on its back. This relationship appeared to be mutually beneficial. The fungal infection was strong enough to protect the headcrab from the danger of the world, and in return, the headcrab allowed the infection to spread wherever it travelled to. Another creature was also discovered only within the quarantine zone. Dubbed the Reviver, this blue ball of flesh showed the natural ability to launch electricity at will. It also displayed the ability to reanimate dead flesh and control it. In appearance and nature, it would seem that it shared a common ancestry with the headcrab species. For the scavengers and those who broke into the quarantine zone to escape the Combine regime, they would see how the Xenian nature had claimed the once acclaimed locations of the city. That was if they survived their journey. They would find how the final guests at the Northern Star Hotel would stay there forever as they were claimed as a food source by the overgrowth, tentacles, and plants. Some became a part of the walls themselves, and for any who entered this horrific region, they would smell what appeared to be a mixture of rotting animal and ammonia. It appeared that the human remains attracted the plant life as they grew towards and through the corpses. For the locations deemed more valuable than the others to the Combine, infestation control teams were sent to at least protect them from the expansion. The Holden Company processing plant and Golden Lion Distillery were two of these. The team that was sent to secure the distillery, however, would enter a nightmare within. As they set up checkpoints to secure each region, accessible only with a keycard, one of the workers inhaled a fungal spore from a spore cloud. Over the following hours, they avoided the barnacles that clung to the ceiling and watched out for head crabs, but inside of that one worker, the spore began to seed. It spread across his system and mutated him in what can only be described as a fate worse than death. His body became the host for an aggressive Xenian plant as his head ripped open into two pieces, and in between, a mouth formed. As for the rest of his team, they also fell to the dangers of this claustrophobic region as the mutated worker wandered the distillery under the control of the plant and spread the spores of the Xenian infestation. Although an extremely dangerous region, human units were still sent in to secure specific landmarks and structures. A train line ran from City 17 through the quarantine zone into the wasteland towards other Combine strongholds. To keep this line operational, Fairview Junction was guarded fiercely by heavily armed soldiers. Towards the tanker yard and home to the antlion farm, the central zoo fell into decay. This place had once been visited by all around to learn about Earth's animals and ecosystem. Ironically enough, the animals that had once been sent here and watched by thousands fell prey to the local antlion nests and putrid Xenian growths. Within the nature exhibit and hallways, the human workers who had given tours of this facility now wandered in pain under the control of the parasitic headcrab. On an educational board, Central Zoo displayed how nature had once functioned, how the smaller animals such as ants ate leaves and foliage. These were eaten by the black-crested bulbul. The bulbul fell victim to the large-scaled pit viper, and up the scale it went until the Bengal tiger ate so many animals below it. The introduction of headcrabs and barnacles entirely changed this food chain. Even Xenian trees, tentacles, and bloaters added a morbid yet interesting mix to the new laws of nature. Everywhere within this once popular tourist attraction offered a sad reminder of how far this world had fallen. And even still, only the bravest of humanity, or those who had submitted to the Combine, would ever see it in this corrupted state, under the control of the local antlion colony. Despite having become a deadly, interdimensional sector of the worst fates imaginable, those who traversed into the QZ for freedom, adventure, or the discovery of lost artifacts set up small bases and homes just out of the eyes of the Combine. One of these homes was a bit more elaborate than those of the human scavenger. Having escaped the torture of the Combine, a weak and vulnerable Vortigaunt managed to break his way into the quarantine zone, and he hid within the sewers. Although the Vortigaunt were seen by humanity as a powerful species due to their ability to form a strong electrical current from nothing, Gary was different. In his disturbing interaction with the alien empire, they had drilled into his head, and as a result, his connection to the mighty, powerful force of the Vortessence was severed. In these fleeting moments of his connection to the Vortessence, Gary created a mural of events that had and would happen in the future in a drained river. The quarantine zone was a terrifying region for many, but Gary's species had lived on Zen before they had been pulled through to Earth. This was almost like a second home to him. In the safety of the drainage tunnels, Gary created a home, caught headcrabs for sustenance, and even created a sort of herb garden with the flora of Zen. For Gary at least, the QZ was a place of safety. Now, the quarantine zone was one of the most secretive locations within the City 17 region and the Wasteland. There was, however, something huge that the Combine did that was covered up extremely well. Before this region had been blocked off, the Combine detected something, an entity that had got in the way of their plans and had avoided capture with ease. The G-Man was not what he appeared to be, and on a standard day, the entity appeared within a tenement building. In this rare moment, the Combine used everything they had to capture the G-Man with the Vortessence energy they had procured from captured Vortigauns. This action, along with the use of a powerful prison they had constructed, the Vault, displaced the entire building the G-Man stood in, along with the human population inside. The G-Man survived this action and was trapped in stasis with the Vortessence energy. As for the humans who had lived in the building, they appeared as ghostly, eerie echoes, stuck in a moment, forever. After the Vault had successfully performed its main action, it was raised into the sky, safe from any interference. To keep the G-Man trapped and the Vault powered, the Combine created Vortigaunt pod farms to generate a constant source of energy. In doing this, 8 substations were constructed across the QZ and connected to the Vault through large power lines. The Vortigaunt inside of these farms were forced into an existence of torment in darkness as they were treated like batteries. One of these substations was constructed and attached to the side of the Northern Star Hotel. This meant that infestation control had to keep a hand on the spread of the infestation inside, a task that cost many lives. The Vault could be regarded as the most important Combine feature within the quarantine zone. To protect it, a second smart barrier was formed around it, and the only way to access the Vault was from a console heavily secured by Combine forces. Having been constructed within the QZ, it meant that no one outside of this region even knew of its existence. For the most part, the quarantine zone remained undisturbed by the population of City 17. This changed approximately 15 years after their occupation on the planet. During a secret resistance raid of a Combine stronghold, Dr. Eli Vance and Russell discovered the blueprints of what they believed to be a Combine superweapon. The exploration of the Combine system, however, alerted the alien force of an intrusion. Over the subsequent hours, the region of the city was sent into high alert as Dr. Eli Vance and his daughter were placed into Combine custody. Alyx was later rescued from her detainment by Russell, and in order to save her father from the terrible fate of Nova Prospect, she and the scientist decided to rescue him, a task that would force her to travel through the quarantine zone. On Alyx's journey, she discovered checkpoint 620. As she approached it and explored, she found the bodies of the workers, avoided the barnacles that had migrated from the zone onto the roofs, and the headcrabs that had sought only to control the next humanoid they found. After Alyx opened the entrance, she travelled through a heavily Xenian-infested metro system and was offered a view into an old world of culture and freedom that had been taken from her when she was a child. Cheese, vacations, and floppy disks of old games. Within the drainage sewers, Alyx found the Vortigaunt mural, and further in, she met Gary. In a brief conversation, Gary asked that Alyx save his kin that had been trapped by the Combine. Alyx did save her father at the guarded Fairview Junction after she crashed his train, but it was also in this region that she witnessed the execution of a scavenger that had also entered the QZ. Throughout the rest of her exploration of the quarantine zone, Alyx discovered the vault, saved one of the Vortigaunt trapped in the substation of the Northern Star, survived a deadly encounter with Jeff in the distillery, named by a scavenger called Larry, fought through the Central Zoo's antlines, and in an attempt to rescue who she believed to be Gordon Freeman, Alyx accidentally crashed the vault into the ground. The Combine had worked hard to set up a system within the quarantine zone to hold the G-Man, but in a matter of hours, a lone resistance member with the help of the Free Vortigaunt had dismantled their entire network. The quarantine zone was one of the Combine's biggest failures, and after the release of the G-Man, it appears that this multi-dimensional alien empire no longer had a use for this region. This Xenian-infected region of City 17 was very significant. It became the home of the Vault, which was important on its own, but it also offered humanity a glimpse into something that even the Combine struggled to fight against, an infection that spread without mercy. The QZ was a time capsule of the old world, mostly untouched by Combine propaganda, influence, or torment, at their hands at least. Each region in this contaminated area had a story that was waiting to be told, a hotel that turned its last guests into eternal parts of the structure, a metro that showed just how far the world had fallen, and the introduction of new species of creatures that were not spotted outside of the walls. These were just some of the locations within the quarantine zone discovered by Alyx. As she explored only a small percentage, there would have likely been even more locations that may have held their own significance and stories. Alyx did only find one of the 8 Vortigaunt pod farms. What were the others connected to? 5 years after the fall of the Vault, the grand citadel of City 17 exploded, and with it, everything within and around City 17 was destroyed. This would have put an end to the quarantine zone as it was. However, the flora and fauna of Xen was resilient. There is always the chance that the Xenian infestation could have survived. If anything, maybe this explosion spread the seeds further afield to expand the growth. I have covered Half-Life lore for quite a long time, but even now, there are so many interesting details that pop up. In the Metro, there is a poster that has cheese on it. When translated, the words mention a cheese dream, clearly a reference to the I Dream About Cheese meme. This is just one of the many small details placed into the world. I have not covered too much of the Half-Life Alyx lore, but I do plan to dive deeper. So far, I have covered Russell, the Vault, and Jeff. The quarantine zone was a highly requested topic, and it did act as a fascinating backdrop to the story of Half-Life Alyx, and it does deserve more attention. I would be more than happy to have another game set during this period in this region. The Northern Star Hotel, Golden Line Distillery, and Central Zoo were my favourite locations in the game, and I cannot help but think about how Valve could use another Xenian-infested, mundane human region to tell another story. That was everything I wanted to cover this week, so please like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, share it with other Half-Life fans, and most importantly, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Finally, I'd like to thank my Gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Oren X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, Arnis, Blaze of Glory, Cole Sherman, Yali Rodriguez, Nabar, and 501st Clone Boy. What did you think of the quarantine zone as a location to explore? Did you kill or save Jeff? And what would you like me to cover next? Please let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.